Right now, as you're watching this video, 28 major US cities are sinking. You might be in one of them, but please don't panic. This process is very slow, progressing at just a few millimeters per year. But why does almost nobody speak about it? When did all this begin? How does it affect large buildings? Why is this happening, and how can it be fixed? Let's find out. Researchers at Virginia Tech conducted a large-scale geological study of the ground and discovered land subsidence. This means that cities like New York, Dallas, Seattle, and others are slowly sinking into the ground. The main issue is that these cities contain a huge amount of infrastructure. If a lamppost sinks into the ground at a rate of 3 millimeters per year, that's not a big deal. But if a skyscraper with a complex engineering structure starts sinking, it becomes a serious threat. The problem is made worse because the ground sinks unevenly. One part of a city may sink faster than another. The same applies to buildings. If the left side of a house sinks while the right side stays in place, the entire structure could collapse. The problem also affects roads. Vertical land motion can cause cracks and even complete failure. A similar situation is currently happening in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. Land subsidence there is so severe that the country is actually relocating its capital to another location. Experts predict that by 2050, 95% of North Jakarta will be completely submerged. Right now, some areas are sinking at a rate of about 10 inches per year, and half of the city is already below sea level. The walls of houses are covered with cracks. The streets smell of dampness, and people who remain in the city are constantly repairing their homes. Yet despite this, luxury real estate continues to be built, and people continue to buy it. Many residents have grown accustomed to these conditions. Flooding has become part of their daily routine. But how do they plan to solve this problem? Authorities want to build a dam, although many experts doubt it will help. It's hard to imagine a similar situation in New York, a city where nearly 26% of the US population lives. The ground beneath this metropolis is sinking at a rate of about 2.5 millimeters per year. That's about 1 inch in every 10 years or 5 inches in 50 years. You might think that's slow to worry about. But the problem is that the ground has already been sinking for decades, and it's almost impossible to predict at what point serious infrastructure problems could begin. But beyond New York, the threat also hangs over Houston, Texas. There, the city is sinking at a rate of just over 5 millimeters per year, which is twice as fast as New York. Fort Worth is sinking at about 4.5 millimeters per year. Dallas is at nearly 5 millimeters. Chicago is sinking at just over 2 millimeters per year. Denver at 1.7 millimeters per year. New York at nearly 2.5 millimeters over the same period. You can find the full list of cities with the most widespread subsidence on the internet. According to scientists, in all 28 cities, at least 20% of urban areas are sinking. In 25 cities, 65% of the ground in inhabited areas is subsiding. If percentages don't mean much to you, here's a number. More than 29,000 buildings are located in zones of high or very high risk of damage. And with each passing year, the risk increases. Some of the highest rates of subsidence are being recorded in several Texas cities, where the average sinking rate is about 5 millimeters per year. Houston has turned out to be the fastest sinking. About 42% of its territory is sinking faster than 5 millimeters per year, and 12% faster than 10 millimeters. New York is also facing serious issues. At one of the city's 3 major airports, LaGuardia, the ground is subsiding at a rate of more than 5 millimeters per year. But the biggest problems are in California. In some areas of this state, the ground hasn't sunk by millimeters or even inches, but by nearly 30 feet. That's about the height of a 3-story building. What does this lead to? Large depressions in the landscape and a wide range of infrastructure problems. Authorities need to figure out how to preserve the integrity of buildings, roads, and bridges before the situation reaches a point of no return. But how can this even be stopped? The solution lies in the very cause of the problem. There are too many people, and buildings have become too heavy. The ground is giving way under all that weight. And okay, that was a joke. The real problem is water. Tens of millions of people live in major cities. And where do you think authorities get the water to supply them? Especially when there's no nearby lake or river with fresh water. They take it from underground sources. And every year, as the population grows, the amount of water extracted grows as well. People are essentially draining underground water reserves, and this leads to serious land subsidence. This issue is especially severe in California, where groundwater is extracted for agriculture. The situation is made worse by hot weather. Lack of rain and drought destroy crops. So where does the water for irrigation come from? Authorities rely on underground sources. Let's return to Jakarta for a moment. Some experts believe that completely stopping the use of groundwater could save the city from flooding. This would require residents to switch to other water sources. Otherwise, the city may have no other options left. In the United States, there are additional challenges. Alongside heat that damages crops, there are opposite extremes. Heavy rainfall leads to the deformation and collapse of infrastructure. Strong winds and hurricanes can cause severe damage to buildings and roads. In addition to groundwater depletion and changing weather patterns, there is another factor. Yes, you're probably tired of hearing that things are getting worse, but no one said this would be easy. Tectonic activity is not uncommon on the West Coast. The ground is sinking, and deep underground tremors further destabilize it. On top of that, coastal cities like Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and others are suffering from rising sea levels. So, here's what we have. Underground, the soil is sinking, and earthquakes are occurring. On the surface, extreme weather is destroying cities and rising sea levels are flooding coastal areas. The situation may seem hopeless, but of course, there is a way forward. Let's not get into the issue of global climate change right now. Many scientists have already proposed countless ways to reduce its impact. Right now, authorities need to focus on the issue of groundwater extraction. One solution may seem unpleasant: wastewater recycling. We use water to take showers or flush toilets, and then it goes down the drain. Scientists want to collect and treat this water so it can be reused. It may sound unappealing, but modern filtration technologies can clean water extremely well and make it safe for reuse. This approach could significantly reduce groundwater consumption, although many people may resist it. Another method is rainwater harvesting. Scientists suggest creating special green zones in cities that absorb rainwater, collect it in large reservoirs, and send it back underground. Geologists might be able to identify the most depleted areas and inject rainwater into them, like filling an empty bottle. And what if every resident placed large containers outside their windows to collect rainwater during storms? Recycling wastewater and harvesting rainwater could reduce pressure on underground sources. It's possible that the process of land subsidence could slow down or even stop. But there is another problem. Humanity will continue to increase its water consumption because of artificial intelligence. Already, massive amounts of water are being used by large companies to cool data centers that train AI models. Every year, they consume more and more, but that's a topic for another video. Miami's luxury towers have everything: car elevators, rooftop pools, celebrity neighborhoods, and something completely unexpected called gradual descent. A new study shows dozens of beachfront high-rises are slowly sinking into the ground. Just a couple of inches over a few years and still moving. What's going on? And is it gonna get worse? Let's find out. When you look at a map of South Florida, the city of Miami is mostly on the mainland. Just off the coast lies a long barrier island. That's Miami Beach, the stretch you see in most drone shots and travel clips. Fancy cars, the beach, the clubs, the glass towers right next to the water. That's all on this island. But it didn't always look like that. For a long time, this area was mostly older hotels and simple apartment buildings. As prices went up and richer buyers started chasing ocean views, developers began knocking those down and putting luxury high-rises in their place. Floor by floor, that island turned into a narrow wall of glass facing the Atlantic Ocean. Now, here's the problem. Miami Beach sits only 4 to 5 feet above sea level. That's barely enough height for comfort. Each fall, king tides push water up through drains and across certain streets on bright, clear days. The flooding sometimes gets so bad that locals could kayak through parking lots for fun. That might sound like a funny video, but for researchers, it raised a serious question. Could the same landscape be shifting beneath the towers too? Some buildings had already shown signs of movement, and the question became whether the ground itself was still settling under all that concrete and steel. To find out, scientists used a method called INSAR, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. It works by having satellites scan the same spot on Earth over and over using radar to detect tiny changes in elevation. It's like watching a tower in slow motion from space, tracking whether it holds steady or slowly sinks. Those scans stack hundreds of satellite passes over the same balcony corners and roof edges. It's the same kind of radar NASA uses to track volcanoes and ground shifts. With enough images, researchers can spot motion as small as the thickness of a credit card. Between 2016 and 2023, they focused on this section of coastline from Sunny Isles to Miami Beach. The data showed that at least 35 high-rise buildings had moved downward over that period. In some cases, the ground had dropped just under an inch. In others, it was closer to 3. That may not seem like much, but over a short time, and in structures this heavy, it means something's off. These weren't new buildings under construction. Most were already finished, which makes the continued movement unusual. In theory, they should have settled and stopped, but they didn't. So what exactly is making the ground sink under these towers? Let's look underground, specifically right under these nice-looking buildings. Beneath the island is a mix of sand and Miami limestone. It is strong enough to build on, but it behaves more like hardened coral than solid mountain rock. Water moves through it, pressure moves through it, and sometimes the ground shifts in ways engineers can't properly predict. One possible explanation is something called creep deformation. It sounds like a villain from a B-movie, but it's actually a slow-motion rearranging of particles under constant pressure. Imagine parking a heavy truck on soft ground. It makes little dents right away, but if the truck stays there for a long time, those dents slowly get deeper. The ground keeps squishing a tiny bit at a time. That slow squishing is what might be happening under these buildings. But it's not just the weight. Construction itself can wake the ground up. Pile drivers, excavation, and heavy machinery can shake the sandy layers enough that older buildings nearby start shifting again. The study also found that some of the newer towers showed stronger movement overall, likely because the soil beneath them was still adjusting after recent construction. And then there's the water. The limestone underneath acts like a sponge, soaking up water from the ocean below and the rain above. When that water moves around, it quietly eats away at the rock and shifts the sand that holds everything up. That's how the ground slowly loosens. So, we have a spongy ground, heavy buildings, and the constant shaking from construction. Plus, water flowing through the rock. Over time, all of that adds up. It presses down just a little at first, then a little more. We're only talking inches, but even small uneven shifts can be enough to make engineers nervous. So, what does this mean for the buildings and all the people making social media reels? Probably, and hopefully nothing. At least not tomorrow. We're still far away from disaster movie scenarios. Structures won't topple over. There won't be sudden sinkholes swallowing cars. It's not how it works. But this problem does raise some eyebrows, especially after what happened just a few miles north in Surfside. In 2021, the Champlain Towers South partially collapsed. It was a huge tragedy that Miami will remember forever. That disaster didn't happen just because the ground moved. Issues kept piling up slowly over the years. Engineers discovered cracks, rust, and bad drainage. The building was falling apart from all sides, and then it was too late to do anything about it. But since then, the city has been paying more attention. Engineers are reassessing older buildings near the coast, and local officials are pushing for stricter inspections. The radar data doesn't mean a building is unsafe, but it can be an early warning, a signal that something deserves a closer look. For residents, though, there's a catch. Right now, there's no rule that says developers or building managers have to monitor ground movement with satellite scans. The study didn't involve teams going inside or taking core samples. It was just a space-based scan from above. If you zoom out from the sinking tower drama and look at that long strip of land, it's already one of the weirdest pieces of real estate on the planet. A good portion of the Miami lifestyle is literally fake land. Star Island, Palm, Hibiscus, the Venetian Chain, and a bunch of other spots started as sand at the bottom of Biscayne Bay. The bay was dredged in the 1920s. The sand was piled into islands, and developers turned those piles into celebrity neighborhoods where houses now cost tens of millions of dollars. Some of the richest people on Earth treat this area like their private game board. Fisher Island, just off South Beach, currently has the most expensive zip code in the United States, with a median listing price in the 8-figure range. A bit farther up sits Indian Creek, known as the Billionaire Bunker. It has only 41 houses, its own police force, and neighbors like Jeff Bezos and Tom Brady. One empty 1.8-acre lot there was recently listed for around $200 million, just for the dirt and the view. And all of this floats along the edge of Biscayne Bay, next to an actual national park full of beautiful marine creatures like dolphins, manatees, and sea turtles. More than 100 bottlenose dolphins live in and around the bay year-round, racing past boat docks and tall condos, like they're extras in someone else's movie. So, what happens next? Engineers keep scanning, inspectors keep checking, and everyone online keeps posting drone shots like nothing odd is happening under their feet. That's Miami, a strange blend of glamour and physics that never quite behaves. It's not a crisis, it's a maintenance routine. As long as the people in charge pay attention to quieter signals like slow dips in elevation or small structural changes, the skyline should hold. Maybe it settles a bit. Maybe it stretches and groans. Now that engineers and scientists are aware of this issue, they can prepare and propose solutions. Until then, the towers will still be up and the bay will still shine bright. The whole city will keep drifting in its own style, just slightly downward.
You're standing on a beach in Hawaii, warm breeze on your face, toes in the sand, a volcano smoldering in the distance. But this fairy tale won't last long as the whole island is sinking into the ocean, 40 times faster than the scientists previously expected. Some parts of the island could be underwater by 2050. Uh-oh. To understand why it's all happening, we have to go way back in time, millions of years ago, to see where it all started, deep under the Pacific Ocean. Now, unlike most volcanoes, which usually form along the edges of tectonic plates, the Hawaiian Islands popped into existence smack in the middle of one. That's because of something geologists call a hotspot. The Earth's mantle is like a giant pot of thick, bubbling stew. In a few places, heat builds up so intensely that molten rock, magma, punches straight through the Earth's crust. It's like turning up the heat under one part of a stew pot until it boils over. That upwelling of magma is the hot spot. As magma reaches the surface, it erupts as lava. When the lava cools and hardens, it forms land. When enough of it piles up over the thousands or even millions of years, an island forms. The hotspot doesn't move and stays rooted deep in the mantle. But the Pacific Plate, the giant chunk of Earth's crust that Hawaii rides on, is always slowly drifting to the northwest. So, every few million years, a new volcano forms over the hotspot and the old one gets carried away. Thanks to all this, a chain of islands formed, each one a little older and more worn down than the last. If you look at a map, you can trace this volcanic breadcrumb trail across the Pacific. It stretches all the way from the Big Island in the southeast, which is the youngest, up through Maui, Oahu, and Kauai, and into the sea as a chain of underwater mountains called the Emperor Seamounts. The Big Island is still growing today, thanks to active volcanoes like Kilauea and Mauna Loa. The older islands, like Kauai, are eroding, shrinking, and, sadly, sinking. Oahu is going in the water at the speed of nearly 1/40th of an inch every year. That's about as thick as 10 sheets of printer paper. But certain coastal regions are sinking at 1 inch per year, and that's no joke. This is happening for a few reasons. First, as the islands move away from the hotspot, they cool down. That might sound good in summer, but cooler rock actually shrinks and becomes denser, making the whole island sit lower in the water. Erosion gradually makes the island smaller, and unless there is further volcanic activity or a drop in sea level, the island submerges below the ocean surface at some point. Second, there's the weight of the islands themselves. They're made of solid rock and lava, thousands of cubic miles of it. Over time, their own mass slowly pushes them downward into the soft underlying mantle. And third, there's human activity. The first people who settled here were Polynesian navigators around 1,000 to 1,200 years ago. These navigators used stars, waves, and bird flight patterns to guide them and reach the Hawaiian Islands after weeks at sea. By the time European explorers arrived in the late 18th century, Hawaiians had developed a rich society with chiefs, priests, artisans, farmers, and navigators. The islands were divided into districts, each managed by local leaders, and people lived in harmony with the land. And then it was time of Kamehameha the Great. He unified all the Hawaiian Islands under a single rule for the first time in 1810. The islands were developing in the following centuries, and people needed more flat land near the coast. They started piling in dirt, rocks, and rubble to cover up soggy ground and create new land where there wasn't any before. It worked for a while, and that's how they built roads, neighborhoods, and even airports at some point. But that ground is soft and squishy underneath, and now those areas are sinking much faster than the rest of the island. A new study says that in some parts of Hawaii, this combination of factors could boost the risk of flooding by over 50% by the year 2050. It could force communities to prepare for future floods 50 years sooner than they originally thought. By 2080, flooding is expected to hit Waikiki, downtown Honolulu, and even the local international airport much more often. That could cause some serious problems for everyday life. Hawaii's tourism, beachfront buildings, and natural ecosystems could all be in complete chaos. Over $12.9 billion worth of infrastructure on Oahu alone is in danger from flooding and related damage. That's roads, hotels, homes, and way more. The scientists behind the study are hoping their work can actually help. They want local leaders to use this new data to make smart decisions that reduce future damage and keep people safe. It could help them figure out how bad flooding might get, how strong the buildings and roads need to be, and how to design communities that can survive big changes. Now, Hawaii isn't the only place in the world that's sinking because of its own weight. The weight of all the buildings in New York City is literally pressing it down into the earth. That's more than 1.68 trillion pounds of skyscrapers, apartments, towers, and bridges. That's enough pressure to make the land beneath the city sink by up to 0.08 of an inch per year. Now that may not sound like much, but it adds up quickly, and in some spots, the sinking is happening even faster. Scientists call this slow downward shift subsidence. To figure all this out, researchers use satellite data to look at just how heavy the city is and how fast the ground is moving. Turns out, it's not just the buildings sitting on solid rock. Some parts of the city were built on squishy stuff like old wetlands, soft sediments, or human-made fill, the same as in Hawaii. But even areas built on sturdier ground aren't safe. The study found that layers rich with clay deep underground can keep compressing slowly over time under the weight of heavy buildings. This process is called secondary settlement and can keep happening for decades or even centuries. So even if it looks like everything's fine on the surface, the ground could still be giving way underneath. The scientists behind the research say this isn't just a New York problem. Cities around the world are expanding fast, and most of that growth is happening along coastlines. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is one of the fastest sinking cities in the world, and it has around 10.5 million people living there and about 30 million in the greater metro area. Experts say that by 2030, some parts of the city could be flooded so often or so badly that all these people just won't be able to live there anymore. Jakarta was built on swampy land. It's right next to the Java Sea and has 13 rivers running through it, so flooding has always been a part of life there, but it's gotten worse lately. Scientists say that by 2050, about 95% of North Jakarta could be underwater, and it's already happening. In the last 10 years, North Jakarta sank by over 8 feet, and in some places, it's still sinking up to 10 inches every year. That's more than double what other big coastal cities are experiencing. On average, Jakarta sinks between 1/3 of an inch to 6 inches each year, and now nearly half of the city is already sitting below sea level. So Indonesia found an original solution to this problem and decided to build a brand new city in the jungle to replace Jakarta. They plan to grow Nusantara, the new capital, into a modern, green, and high-tech city in the next 20 years. City planners are calling Nusantara a sponge city, as it should be able to absorb rainwater into the ground like a sponge, instead of letting it flood the streets. That way, even with heavy rain, Nusantara won't flood the way Jakarta has. So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas fault line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas fault line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tejon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis. But there's something that can cause more damage than the Big One. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas fault line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas Fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas Fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since saltwater will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried-out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas Fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put 2 and 2 together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed. But Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
Is the Big Apple getting a little too heavy for its own good? A recent study revealed that New York City is sinking. And get this, it's all because of those towering skyscrapers. Apparently, the whole event is called subsidence, which is when the Earth's surface settles bit by bit, or suddenly sinks. Soft sediments shifting and the weight of the city itself are the culprits behind this sinking sensation. Now, don't get too alarmed. The study found that New York is sinking at a rate of 0.04 to 0.07 inches per year. Sure, that doesn't sound like much, but there are parts of the city that are sinking even faster than that. This sinking situation could cause some trouble for the city, especially since it's already pretty low-lying and home to over 8 million people. So it's important that local authorities come up with some strategies to tackle the growing flood risk and rising sea levels. Although, I'm not sure building giant seawalls is the way to go. We might need to get a little more creative than that. Geologists want to make sure we're all aware that building more high-rises near the coast, rivers, or lakes could contribute to future flood risks. So we really need to think twice before we start constructing skyscrapers left and right. In recent studies, scientists calculated the total mass of all the buildings in New York City, over 1 million of them, and it adds up to a whopping 1.68 trillion pounds. Talk about a heavy load. Now, they didn't include the weight of the roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other paved areas, so you can only imagine how much more weight is added to the city. But hey, even with these limitations, the researchers did a pretty good job of accounting for the complex geology beneath New York, including the sand, silt, clay deposits, and good old bedrock. They found out that certain types of soil, like clay and artificial fill, are more prone to subsidence. On the other hand, bedrock stays pretty firm and keeps those skyscrapers in place. So at least we don't have to worry about the Empire State Building taking a dive anytime soon. Comparing their fancy models with satellite data, the researchers created a map of the city showing where the sinking is happening. And guess what? The increased urbanization and all that groundwater pumping and draining are only making things worse. It's high time we start protecting our resources, don't you think? I wouldn't start packing my bags just yet. New York isn't the only sinking city out there, you know. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is facing some serious sinking action too. In fact, parts of it could be underwater by 2050. That's like a real-life Atlantis situation. Over 30 million people in Jakarta are now deciding if they should relocate the entire city. If there's a city out there we should worry about sinking, that's Venice for sure. But why is it so eager to take a dive, you might ask? Well, let me tell you the complex truth. You see, Venice decided to set up shop on a marshy lagoon with shoddy foundations. As time went by, the ground underneath just couldn't hold it together and started compacting like a squished marshmallow. On top of that, the city's been slurping up groundwater like it's going out of style or something. The cherry on top of this mushy cake is that the sea levels have also been slowly rising. And guess what? Those sneaky plate tectonics are having a laugh by shoving the Adriatic plate under the Apennine Mountains, giving Venice an extra push downward. Someone had the bright idea to stop pumping groundwater, thinking they could stop the sinking shenanigans. But hold your gondolas. A new study revealed that the sinking hasn't completely stopped, just slowed down a bit. It turns out the whole area is tilting ever so slightly to the east, with Venice perched on the slightly higher end. You must be wondering how much Venice sinks in a year, right? Brace yourself for this shocking revelation. It's sinking at a rate of about 0.04 to 0.07 inches a year, similar to New York. At this pace, in the next 20 years, it could sink a whopping 3 inches below sea level. To avoid turning into a Venetian fishbowl, locals are frantically building special barriers to keep the water from crashing into the lagoon. But don't hold your breath, because this project has had more delays than you'd expect. Oh, and have you noticed that charming old-style vibe in Venice? It's not just because they're fans of the vintage look. Those salty waters have been wreaking havoc on the buildings, thanks to the water levels constantly breaching the original damp proofing. Now the water's cozying up to the masonry, and the ground floors of many apartments are no longer safe enough to live in. Now, when will Venice take a dive into the abyss? It's hard to say for sure. Subsidence and rising sea levels are as slow and unpredictable as a turtle in a marathon. But experts have playfully warned that if things continue as they are, Venice could be doing the backstroke beneath the waves by 2100. Fear not, though. They're doing their best to protect this floating gem of history and culture from becoming a Hollywood disaster flick. So don't cancel that Venice day trip just yet. New Orleans has a peculiar watery situation going on too. You see, this lively place was initially built just a smidge above sea level, and now it's gradually sinking. Back in the day, when an area of the city called the French Quarter was just popping up, folks had to make do with what they had. They scored the best land they could find, but it was only about 10 feet above sea level. And let's not forget, the rest of the city is as flat as a pancake, with the areas around the French Quarter being just a hair lower. Now, even though they knew they were up against some soggy odds, the resourceful New Orleans residents did their best to elevate their houses above the flood-prone land they chose as their home. There's more. The ground beneath New Orleans is as wobbly as a plate of Jell-O. Architects had to keep things short and sweet because they feared the soil couldn't handle the weight of taller structures. They played it safe, sticking to 2 or 2.5 stories. Here's where it gets interesting. The city installed a fancy drainage system in the 1900s, thinking it would solve their water woes. And while it did help with the marshes and all, it inadvertently sucked the life out of the soil. Yep, the ground was left high and dry, without enough sediment and water to keep it steady. As a result, those former marshes sank as if they were in a quicksand competition. By the 1930s, things got even more topsy-turvy. 1/3 of the city was below sea level, and by the time Hurricane Katrina made its grand entrance, that number skyrocketed to around 50%. Oh, and here's the icing on the cake. Sea levels decided to join the party, rising faster than a helium balloon. So now, not only is New Orleans sinking, but the surrounding area is also at various degrees below sea level. So what can we do about all these sinking cities? Well, for instance, we could manage our water consumption a bit better. We can't just keep sucking groundwater out of the earth like there's no tomorrow. We've got to find new ways to quench our urban centers' thirst. Think about it. We could purify surface waters, or even turn salty seawater into a sweet solution. Of course, we'll need a boatload of energy to make it all work. Speaking of great urban water management, let me tell you about a town in Denmark called Nye. These guys have got it all figured out. They collect rainwater and use it to supply their toilets and washing machines. Talk about resourcefulness. Now that's what I call a splash of genius.
The floor is lava. Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level. And a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence. And when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first. In Utah, there's a massive jagged scar in the earth slicing through the landscape like a knife through a cake. And here's the weird part. You've probably never heard of it. No breaking news banners, no police tape fluttering in the wind, no black helicopters circling overhead. A crack this huge appears out of nowhere, literally tearing the desert apart, and the world just kind of shrugged. How is that even possible? Why is something this dramatic getting the silent treatment? To solve this mystery, we need to dig deep, literally. Let's zoom in on the scene of the crime. This isn't a clean, straight line you'd see on a map. It's messy, it's chaotic. In some spots, the walls drop straight into pitch blackness. In others, the edges have crumbled, so getting close feels risky. The crack dominates the view, yet it's hiding in plain sight. The experts over at the Utah Geological Survey aren't totally clueless though. They have a theory. It's a concept that sounds boring on paper. Subsidence. But trust me, the reality is terrifying. Think of it this way. Don't picture the ground as a solid block of stone. Think of it like a wet bath sponge. Down below you have aquifers, layers of soil and sand holding water. That water acts like a support beam. It pushes out against the dirt and holds the ground up. But here's the catch. We are thirsty. Agriculture, cities, industry, we're sticking giant straws into the earth and slurping that water up like a milkshake. So what happens to a wet sponge when you squeeze it dry? It shrinks. It gets brittle. That is exactly what's happening in Utah. We drain the water, the support vanishes, and the soil collapses on itself. Gravity wins. The floor literally gives out because it's empty inside. That's the leading theory. We dehydrated the ground until it snapped. But hold on, if it's just about water, why does this look so dramatic? This isn't just a gentle dip in the road. This is where the experts point to the mechanics of the disaster. When the ground subsides, it doesn't always go down evenly. Deep underground, you have ridges of solid bedrock buried beneath the soil. When the soft soil sinks, it drapes over these hard ridges like a wet blanket over a sharp fence post. The tension builds up until snap. The earth tears open from the bottom up. This creates deep vertical fissures that can stretch for miles, and unlike earthquakes, which give you a rumble, these things are dangerously silent. One day the field is flat, and the next morning there's a gash deep enough to swallow a tractor. So, here's the million-dollar question. If this is caused by us draining the aquifers, why isn't it a national emergency? Why aren't sirens wailing? 2 words: location and money. Most of these fissures in Utah, like the ones in Cedar Valley and Parowan, tear open in rural areas. They appear in alfalfa fields, remote scrublands, or near dusty service roads. They aren't threatening a skyscraper in downtown Salt Lake City. Yet. In the real world, out of sight means out of mind. Since these cracks mostly annoy farmers and damage irrigation pipes, they don't make headline news. The crack just sits there, growing, waiting. For the locals who live near them, these fissures aren't a viral internet mystery or a tourist attraction. They're a practical nightmare. Farmers view them with dread, not because of superstition, but because they're dangerous. Livestock can fall in. Farm equipment can be destroyed. There's no riding dirt bikes into the abyss here. These are unstable, crumbling scars on private land that represent a livelihood literally falling apart. But there's a tension there. Experts know the uncomfortable truth. If a fissure like the one in Enoch, Utah, opened up 50 miles away under a newly built suburb, we wouldn't be ignoring it. We'd be calling it a catastrophe. And that's the scary part. We treat these cracks like weird roadside attractions, but they're actually warning shots. This isn't just a Utah problem, it's a global one. We've seen what happens when we ignore the ground beneath us. And yes, it happened before, and you may remember. Guatemala City in 2010? People heard strange sounds for weeks. Then suddenly, a nightmare. A perfectly circular hole 60 feet wide, 300 feet deep, opened up downtown. It swallowed a 3-story factory whole. It looked like a portal to the underworld just popped open at an intersection. That wasn't an earthquake. That was soil failure. Or take the horror story from Florida in 2013. A man named Jeff Bush was asleep in his bed, safe at home. In the middle of the night, a sinkhole opened up directly under his room. The floor just vanished. His brother heard a scream and ran in, but Jeff was gone. The earth had taken him, and he didn't survive. The house was demolished, the lot fenced off, and that was it. Nature took its space back. Then you look at China, where aggressive mining and water reduction have created cracks that make the Utah thing look small and funny. Entire neighborhoods are split in half, bridges collapse, fields are sliced open. And this isn't another science fiction story. This is the reality of living on a planet that we are actively destabilizing. The crack in Utah is trying to tell us something. We just need to listen to it carefully. It's a giant dusty bill coming due. We treated the ground like an infinite bank account, and now the check has bounced. Needless to say, the system is stressed. We build on it, drill into it, drain it, and assume it will just take it. But even the Earth has a breaking point. What keeps scientists awake at night isn't necessarily this specific crack in the desert. It's what comes next. These things like to spread. Today, it's the desert. Tomorrow, maybe a highway. Next year? Why not the foundation of a new housing development? And it's not just about a hole in the ground, it's about what runs through the ground. Fiber optic cables, gas mains, sewage lines. When the earth shifts even a few inches, those pipes snap. We're talking about billions of dollars in infrastructure damage that happens in slow motion. You don't see the disaster until your basement floods or the road buckles under your tires. And here's the kicker. Soil compaction doesn't heal. You can't just pump water back in and inflate the ground like a balloon. Once that structure collapses, it's game over. The land sinks permanently. The cracks are scars that stay forever. So why should you care about a hole in Utah? Because it's a canary in the coal mine. It's a visual representation of the damage we are doing, invisible to the unaided eye until it's too late. The silence surrounding this phenomenon is the most dangerous part of it. It suggests that if we don't look at the problem, it doesn't exist. But gravity works whether you're watching or not. The Utah crack is a monument to the unseen forces shaping our world. It challenges us to look down and ask, what exactly are we standing on? The earth is tearing open, and it would be very, very wise to stop ignoring it.
This thing is happening all over the world now. Giant voids are suddenly opening under homes, cars, and city streets. You can live right above a hidden opening without knowing it. It stays totally invisible underground until the surface unexpectedly breaks one day, swallowing your truck in the best-case scenario. These voids are sinkholes. You don't see them, but they keep getting bigger and bigger. At one point, the ground can't support itself anymore and collapses. Streets drop down, cars fall in, and sometimes buildings get pulled into sinkholes too. A single sinkhole can shut down roads for months, cut off water and power, and cost tens of millions to repair. Like in Baltimore, where the cost of fixing a single collapse jumped to over $30 million. Sinkholes start underground when water erodes soil or dissolves rock like limestone, creating empty cavities. In cities, there's even more risk because leaking pipes, heavy construction, and paved surfaces change how water moves and trap it underground. This speeds up erosion from within. But the longer the surface stays intact, the more unstable it becomes underneath. It makes collapses even more violent. Sinkholes are now happening more often in highly populated areas. The ground can suddenly open up beneath roads, sidewalks, or buildings. For example, drivers in Omaha, Nebraska ran into trouble. A huge hole ripped open right in the road. When the police showed up, they found two vehicles almost swallowed by the ground. One pickup truck stuck straight down nose first, like it just dropped in. Officers blocked 3 streets to secure the area and deal with the damage, and specialists came to check the ground and keep it from collapsing further. Luckily, despite how catastrophic it looked, no one got hurt. In Phillipsburg, New Jersey, a few sinkholes suddenly opened on a quiet street. The ground collapsed and swallowed a dump truck. And since the area was close to local businesses and homes, it was a double danger. Emergency crews arrived quickly. Firefighters, police, and excavation teams blocked off the street, checked the damage, and tried to keep the ground from collapsing further. But sinkholes had already spread across the road and left the area unstable. Nearby residents lost water service almost immediately. Faucets just stopped working. Firefighters and volunteers went door to door, handing out bottled water so people could manage basic needs. At the same time, engineers started inspecting nearby homes. They checked foundations, looked for cracks, and tested ground stability. Some houses were located too close to the collapse zone, and there was a real risk they might not be safe to live in. Now, moving on to another part of the world. In Bangkok, a wide, busy road suddenly gave way and dropped about 160 feet into the ground, opening a massive sinkhole almost in the center of the city. This collapse happened near large hospitals and a police station in a residential area. Officials quickly blocked off the site and told nearby residents and workers to leave the area. Early reports claimed that underground train construction was a key factor. Soil from the construction site started shifting and sliding. This weakened the ground above and triggered the collapse. It knocked out utilities in the area, including electricity. The good thing is that even though the incident was extremely serious, there were no injuries or fatalities. In Turkey's Konya region, this guy was sitting at home drinking tea with friends when he heard a low rumble outside. It was getting louder and louder. Then an explosion sounded. The man rushed to the window and saw water and mud blasting into the air, rising as high as nearby trees. He already knew what was happening. A massive sinkhole had just opened, about 160 feet wide and 130 feet deep. And it wasn't the first one. Another had formed on his land a year earlier. It happened in August, the hottest time of the year. Sinkholes are spreading fast across this farming region. Experts now count nearly 700 of them. Farmers deal with constant risks. Fields collapse and land disappears. All their work gets wiped out in seconds. The problem is, much of the region sits on limestone, which water can slowly dissolve. But farming has made things worse. For years, farmers have pumped huge amounts of groundwater to irrigate crops. Once water levels drop, empty spaces underground lose support, and eventually, the surface caves in. A similar problem hit villages in northeast Croatia, but much faster. In Mečačani, one morning looked normal, and then the ground suddenly collapsed. A huge hole opened in one backyard and quickly filled with water. It was about 100 feet wide and 50 feet deep. More followed. Within weeks, nearly 100 sinkholes opened across the area. But the timing wasn't random. Just a few days earlier, a powerful 6.4 magnitude earthquake struck near this city. It was the strongest in over 40 years. It took the lives of 7 people and destroyed thousands of homes. The shaking likely weakened the ground, and the surface gave way. In Buracicapú, a city in the northeastern part of the Brazilian Amazon, the ground is breaking apart too. Large sinkholes opened across the area, making local officials declare a state of emergency. Around 1,200 people out of 55,000 now risk losing their homes as the ground under entire neighborhoods becomes unstable. Several buildings have already collapsed. For more than 30 years, residents have watched the land slowly erode. The soil there is loose and sandy, so heavy rain easily washes it away. Water seeps underground, removing support, and creates voids that eventually collapse. Heavy rain speeds up the process. As more water seeps in, it washes away soil and makes the sinkholes wider and deeper, putting more homes at risk. Now, sinkholes can be small, just a few feet wide. Others drop more than 100 feet deep. And then there's the largest sinkhole on Earth that even formed its own ecosystem. At the bottom of a massive limestone pit in southern China, there's a hidden forest. Thick plants, damp air, and steep walls cut it off from the outside world. From above, This sinkhole looks like a giant scoop taken out of the earth. The sides drop into a deep, dark void, often covered in mist. It's about 2,000 feet deep and stretches around 1,700 feet wide. It's nearly as deep as 2 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other and wide enough to fit a massive stadium. The space inside could hold around 40,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. As we already know, sinkholes form when the ground collapses into empty space below, and water usually drives the process, seeping into rock and slowly breaking it down. This creates underground gaps. At some point, the surface can't hold anymore and caves in. That's exactly what happened here, but on a massive scale. For thousands of years, rainwater soaked into the limestone and ate away at it, creating cracks and tunnels. At the same time, a strong underground river carved out huge caves below the surface. In the end, the ground above gave way. The collapse likely didn't happen all at once. This sinkhole has 2 levels, a larger upper section and a deeper lower one, so it probably formed in separate stages. Over time, a full ecosystem took over the pit. The deep walls block sunlight and trap moisture, creating a cool, humid microclimate. Plants thrive in these conditions. Scientists have found over 1,200 plant species there, including ancient ginkgo trees, ferns, and mosses. Animals moved in too. Even rare species, like the clouded leopard, have been spotted in this hidden forest. To sum it all up, sinkholes are showing up faster these days, and they cause much more damage. The weather makes it worse, since higher temperatures speed up rock breakdown. Heavy rain pushes more water underground, fills cracks, and expands the hidden spaces. Together, they make these voids form faster and weaken the ground from below. A sinkhole can open literally anywhere in the world. Next time, it could be your hometown.
Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world, with a population of about 22 million. This is a megapolis, filled with cars, crowds of people, skyscrapers, beautiful buildings, and other attributes of big cities. That's why it's hard to believe that, right now, the city is slowly sinking into the ground. Mexico City was founded by the Aztec Indians in the early 14th century. At that time, it had a different name. The Aztec capital was surrounded by a large lake. Much later, the city was renamed Mexico City and turned into a huge metropolis. For centuries, people have been pumping water out of the area, but it doesn't help much. By the 19th century, people realized that some parts of the city were slowly sinking because of wet clay. At that time, it was happening so slowly that no one worried about it. But recent studies have shown that the process is accelerating. It's impossible to predict at what rate the city is going down, since it's built on a mixture of clay and volcanic soil. Because of this, the city sinks unevenly. In one area, several buildings can go underground in a matter of days. In another district, houses can stand for centuries without change. Soil collapse in particular streets can trigger a chain of earthquakes and landslides. Huge modern houses are at great risk. They're heavy and stand on wet clay that has never hardened. As a result, the clay falls deeper and deeper under the weight of such buildings, dragging along entire city sections. Some researchers are sure that the city could sink 65 feet in the next 150 years. This means that all 6-story buildings might end up underground. Skyscrapers will eventually sink too, and 1-story villas will disappear much earlier. Some densely populated areas in Mexico City are sinking by 20 inches per year. That is, every 3 to 4 years, each building goes down by the height of the average person. Outside the city, some places are built on even wetter soil. In 150 years, 10-story buildings will go underground there. People in Mexico City have invented a unique system for pumping and processing water. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that this will help to prevent the city from sinking. Water has been in this soil for thousands of years. It's almost impossible to make the earth solid. One of the most reliable ways to save the city is to strengthen its foundation. This task will require a huge amount of concrete, but even this artificial hardening of the soil may not help. There's too much moisture deep underground, and all that concrete can simply sink even lower. This next town is also surrounded by water, but that's not because it's sinking. Small Geethorn is located in the Netherlands. This place has tons of canals. We can say this is Dutch Venice. There are so many river channels here that there are no roads at all. You can step out of your house and get to the bank of some stream or river in no time. People here travel by boats instead of cars. This is one of the main features of the town. You won't hear beeps or sirens. Locals claim that you won't actually hear anything louder than bird songs. And unlike on regular roads, there are no traffic jams in the canals. But even if the town didn't have its amazing water routes, it'd still be lovely. Beautiful cozy houses, small bridges, lots of plants, colorful flowers, and trees. Then there's the island of Burano in the Venetian lagoon. It's filled with canals just like Venice, but this place has one difference. In the past, thick fog regularly descended on the city. It made visibility very low, and the residents of the place often confused their own homes with others. The buildings were too similar to one another in architecture. That's why locals decided to paint their houses in bright colors to recognize them even in thick fog. According to this legend, that's why all the buildings in Burano are painted in different colors. You can see bright pink, yellow, green, turquoise, and other hues here. Every 2 years, locals renew the paint to maintain the beauty of the city. If you buy a house here, you will have to get a special permit for painting it, and the color will be chosen according to a special system developed many centuries ago. Our next town is one of the most unusual in the world. You're in cold Alaska, heading to Whittier. A long tunnel is the only entrance to this place. As soon as you go through it, you find yourself in a strange place. It's very cold here. Strong winds are blowing, and it's snowing heavily. The streets are empty. You don't see any locals. It seems the town is abandoned, but then you notice a wide 14-story building. You go inside and see all the residents are there. Whittier's population is about 220 people, and they all live in one building. In addition to residential apartments, inside you can find stores, a police station, a library, and a cafe. Imagine going to your office a couple of floors beneath your home, and the store is just next door. There's a post office on the first floor, next to the entrance. But the coolest thing is the view from the windows. You can see the incredible beauty of the snow-covered mountains. You aren't likely to notice the next small town if you don't know what you're looking for. Everything, houses, cafes, a post office, and other buildings, is all underground. You can only see pipes pouring out smoke protruding from the ground. Welcome to Coober Pedy, Australia. In addition to the pipes, there are warning signs everywhere. They inform you about inconspicuous holes you can fall into. Go inside, and around you, you'll see soil instead of the regular walls and wallpaper. But this isn't the only unique feature of this place. Most of the opals you can buy from all over the world are mined in this city. In 1915, opals were first found in the soil there. Since then, people have been coming here to search for these precious stones. There are no mining companies here because you can't determine the presence of opals by exploratory drilling. To find an opal, you simply need to dig and look around. People come here, rent some land, and build houses right in the ground. Let's finish our journey not in a city, but in the village of Kuldara in India. It's not easy to get there. It's not a really hard-to-reach place, but not every local will agree to drive you there. You may have to pay twice the price to the driver. And even in this case, they won't bring you exactly to the place. They'll stop nearby and tell you how to get to your destination. Kuldara village is abandoned. There are only ruins and old buildings. This place looks like an ancient city that has been recently excavated from the ground by archaeologists. The first buildings here were constructed around the 13th century. The city consisted of many small villages that were united into communities. Locals were engaged in agriculture. Also, there were valuable gypsum rocks and minerals in this region. The place flourished for several centuries in the past. But in 1825, everything changed. One night, the residents quickly got their stuff and left their homes. Overnight, Kuldara became abandoned. The most interesting thing is that no one knows why it happened. According to one theory, the village's water reserves decreased. But it doesn't seem likely that this could force the residents to flee their homes in the middle of the night. The most popular version says the local ruler collected huge taxes from this small place. Then, he fell in love with the village chief's daughter. The ruler threatened he would start collecting even more taxes if the girl refused to marry him. He gave her 1 day to make the decision. The locals decided to support the girl and her father, so they left their homes in one night. Many people think this village hides a mystery. It attracts many tourists. They believe the residents of the village had cursed this place before they left so that no one could live there. The locals are afraid of this area, and so they try to avoid it.
Now, you might want to book your dream vacation to Miami Beach as soon as you can, because this whole area might be underwater in the next 75 years. But it's not just Florida. Parts of Louisiana, California, and Washington are also expected to be among the first American states affected by sea level rise. If you live in the United States, you can check for yourself whether your address is on the list of cities that will disappear. Just search for Sea Level Rise Viewer on Google. That will take you to a tool created by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And it helps us visualize what coastal flooding might look like in the future. Now, you see that dark area in blue? Those are the sinking cities of the U.S. And by that, I mean cities that could be submerged by 2100. That's in the worst-case scenario, if ocean levels were to rise by as much as 10 feet. Hopefully, it won't come to that. As you probably know by now, sea levels are going up because the Earth is getting warmer. When the planet heats up, ice at the North and South poles melts, and all that extra water flows into the oceans. Plus, warmer water expands and takes up more space. So, between the melting ice and the expanding oceans, sea levels slowly rise over time. And that means more flooding and even the possibility of some cities ending up underwater. Right now, statistics show that sea levels are expected to rise by around 6 feet by the year 2100. The problem is that this could cause major coastal flooding, and not just during storms or heavy rains. Even on clear days, some areas could end up underwater. And that brings us to a question. How do we actually know how high ocean waters are? These days, experts can measure sea level with incredible accuracy, thanks to satellite altimeters. That's basically a special type of radar that measures how high something is. It figures out the height of the ocean by timing how long it takes for a radar pulse to travel from the satellite down to the surface of the sea and then bounce back. When scientists combine that data with the satellite's exact location, they can map even the tiniest changes in sea level all over the world. Right now, coastal flooding predictions are showing us something serious. The rate of global sea level rise has doubled over the past 3 decades. And there are plenty of tools online that help us to visualize just how big this problem could become in the future. The Sea Level Rise Viewer I mentioned earlier focuses on areas within the United States. But if you don't live there, you can still check if your address might be in danger. Just look up the interactive map from Climate Central. If you set the water level to 10 feet above the high tide line, you'll see that a lot of countries could be seriously affected. Let's take a look at South America. In Argentina, for example, rising waters could flood many parts of Buenos Aires province. Head over to Brazil, and you'll see that a lot of cities, including Rio de Janeiro, would be affected. We might have to say goodbye to that iconic wave-patterned sidewalk along Copacabana Beach, and both of the city's airports would be flooded too. Things don't look much better in Europe. Major cities like Lisbon in Portugal, Valencia in Spain, and Rome in Italy could end up partly underwater. Honestly, the worst situation in Europe is probably in the Netherlands. Right now, about a quarter of the country is literally below sea level, and nearly half of it sits just 3 feet above. So if sea levels rise, they are facing some serious risks. This entire red zone, which includes cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam, would be below the surface if the ocean rose by 10 feet. Fortunately, the Netherlands is probably the country with the most experience in fighting back against the sea. For years, they have tackled the threat with massive infrastructure, things like giant canals, windmills, and dikes, all designed to manage the water. And thanks to their efforts, the Dutch have reclaimed about 20% of their land from the sea. That's right, they're actually expanding. Unfortunately, some countries are at much higher risk than others. According to estimates, about 5 of them are in serious danger of disappearing in the near future. First up is Fiji, a tropical paradise loved by tourists. This nation is in a tough spot because of its low-lying landscape. There, extreme warming could cause sea levels to rise by as much as 6 feet by the year 2100. It doesn't help the fact that Fiji sits right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where massive storms can quickly turn things into chaos. That means people there need to brace themselves for more frequent flooding, and they're already taking action. To protect against coastal erosion, some communities are lining the seashore with old tires to keep sand from washing away in stronger waves. Others are planting mangroves across the coast. These trees can reduce the height of waves hitting the shore by an average of 31%. Plus, they help cut down wind speeds, which really matters during cyclones. Next on the red list is Vanuatu. This chain of islands, located between Australia and Fiji, could be underwater sooner than we think, and they're already making changes. Vanuatu was one of the first Pacific nations to relocate an entire community to safer ground. Back in 2005, people living in vulnerable areas on the North Island of Tegua moved to higher land. With temperatures continuing to rise, they're bracing for even more intense tropical cyclones. That means heavier rainfall, more flooding, and a much higher risk to both homes and infrastructure. The Marshall Islands are also facing a serious risk. This country is home to around 39,000 people and lives on the opposite side of the world from the United Kingdom. It's an extremely low-lying island nation built on what's basically a coral reef. According to NASA, sea levels there have risen by almost 4 inches over the past 30 years, and they could rise by about 7.5 inches over the next 30. And that's no small thing. If nothing is done, the islands could face more than 100 days of flooding every year by the end of the century. People over there are afraid of losing their homes. Studies also show that up to 40% of the buildings in the capital city, Majuro, could end up underwater in the future. But this country isn't ready to give up, and they're reinforcing the infrastructure. The Solomon Islands are also being slowly swallowed by the sea. This region has been experiencing sea level rise at nearly 3 times the global average. Over the years, satellite images have shown that 5 vegetated reef islands have already vanished beneath the waves. On the bright side, the people there are working hard to protect their homes. They're building stone walls along the coast and planting mangroves to hold back the water. But the worst case might be Tuvalu, as it could become the first country to turn completely uninhabitable because of rising seas. This island chain, located about halfway between Australia and Hawaii, sits only about 9 feet above sea level. And in its narrowest spot, in a place called Fungafale, the land is just about 65 feet wide. You can see how vulnerable the situation is, right? I mean, even before the higher tides arrive, the country's limited farmland could be affected by salt water. These islands are a powerful example of resilience, and a reminder that sinking cities don't have to mean disappearing ones. While the challenges are real, the global response to sea level rise is growing stronger every day. Around the world, communities are adapting, innovating, and coming together to tackle the threat of rising water.